Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Pallas. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have an exciting show. It's the Human Library, and we are checking out Jim Enderle. It's going to be an awesome show. If you are watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. If you are on Facebook, please register with StreamYard so I can see your name and know who I'm talking to and who's making the comments. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, Ruth, Ray, Kristen, I'm so sorry. Kirsten, Ray, Heidi, Ruth, Michelle, you guys rock and enable the show to go on. If you enjoy the show and would like to sponsor it and me, you can go to sherrypallas.com and hit the support tab, and it's all there. I've got stuff on Patreon, like really cool t-shirts. I've got memberships on Patreon, all that good stuff. So if you support the show, I really appreciate it. If not, I'm just glad that you invite me into your house every week to learn and to chat and to have our show. So I also want to mention my ever-changing background. Does it look like my head's on fire? I was trying to be cute and cool. So leave it in the comments as to what you think of my background at this point. I think the fire is kind of cool, but it might look like my head's on fire and I'm either Medusa or a flaming heretic. Not real sure, but let me know what you think, and we can go from there. So let's meet our guest. I know Jim because he wrote this phenomenal book. So we're going to talk about that tonight, as well as some other things. Let's go ahead and meet him. Jim Enderle is a retired Naval Hospital Corpsman and combat veteran of Iraq. He worked the Chief of Groton, I think I said that right, CT's traumatic brain injury, TBI, PTSD, Intensive Outpatient Clinic for returning war veterans and their families. His memoir is Fight, Flight, or Freeze, a Love Story. Welcome, Jim. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Sherry.
You know, I want to tell everybody that Jim is not only a hero to our country, he is also my hero. He just got out of the hospital today, and while I gave him every out to get out, he chose to come and talk to us. So definitely applaud him for that, and I can't wait to hear his story. So Jim, tell me where you are right now and how old you are.
Right now, I'm in my family home in Groton, or in Quaker Hill, Connecticut.
Okay.
And I'm 64.
Okay, so you have lived an exciting life and have written this book. Let's start with the beginning. I want to check you out. Let's start at age 8. Tell me who you were, what were your dreams, what were your fears? Who was Jim at 8 years old?
At 8 years old, I was really idealistic. I grew up in Chicago, and I witnessed what I believed was the first moments of racial tension in the history of the world. And about the same year, my grandfather, I found out, served in the Battle of the Bulge. And when I went and bought a patch and went up and showed him the patch, make a long story short, I had it sewn onto a T-shirt, and I went up and I showed it to him. And I thought my grandfather would be impressed that I had a Third Army patch on my shirt. And instead, he looked and he said, "Wow, where did you get that?" And I said, "I bought it for 57 cents down at the Army Navy surplus store. What do you think, Grandpa?" And he said, "Well, we had 175,000 troops killed, missing, wounded, and I just can't believe that they're selling that patch for 57 cents. And I knew right then that there was a lot of things in my life. I was really lucky. I really led a charmed life as far as my family. But I knew that there were a lot of things in my life that were not visible from my home.
Mm.
So I would sneak into my apartment building or sneak up to the roof of my apartment building and look out and just wonder what there was about this world that I didn't know.
Interesting. What do you think drove that curiosity?
Um, I knew friends of mine that never seemed as comfortable in life. Like some of them were single parent homes, and some of them that there just were differences in life that I felt so much more fortunate in some ways. We didn't have any more than anyone else, but I just felt really lucky. I had good relationships with my parents and my brothers, or my brother and sister. I have one brother and one sister, but I just felt that I always felt fortunate. I
That's
felt like I
awesome.
led a charmed life.
It's the entitlement never entered you at that point. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I never forgot that, and I think the experience with my grandfather, the one thing I really took away from that is that there's a lot that happened in this world that I would never know from where I was,
Mm.
and from the roof of my apartment building, I could look and see Cabrini Green, which was considered then the highest crime area in the world,
Oh,
and it was
wow.
only a couple miles from my apartment building. And I was thinking, here I am in this little German pocket of Chicago that was pretty safe. We could walk up and down the streets without a problem. And only 2 miles away was one of the high crime areas of the world. And just just in a matter of minutes, the world could change dramatically.
Wow. So let's fast forward 10 years. Who were you at 18?
Well, I was married
At 18?
at 18, and I was thinking at 18 that I thought I have saved a lot of time because most people spend their lifetime looking for the perfect love. And I felt that I found that in my high school sweetheart. So I thought all the time that people would spend looking for this ideal person, I feel like I had that. And I thought, I thought my focus, I just wanted to like build a house, and I wasn't a very focused high school student. I didn't have much of an emphasis on education in my life. I just wanted to be a tradesman and build a house and think about having a family, and that was my biggest focus. I think as far as fears, I was afraid that the relationship wouldn't work because I felt like I had to work too many hours to get what the kind of lifestyle that was
Mm.
important to her.
I would guess that you lived up to those expectations.
For 7 years, I did.
Only 7?
Yeah.
Why only 7?
Well, when we got married, she was younger than I was, and at 7 years, um, she just said, I'm 24. I've never made a decision in my life. I've never dated anyone else, and neither had I. But she just was at a point in her life that she just said, I've just never done one single thing in my life, and I think it's important that I do before I begin to settle down. She felt that she loved me, but she also thought that was important. And I uh, I felt like maybe there would be counseling or there'd be something else, but I also thought that it takes two people to stay together. And I maybe it wasn't the right thing, but I didn't let her know how much I grieved because I
Mm.
thought that it was a lifelong commitment, but I also thought that it was important that not factor into her decision. And her decision was to move on.
That was very honorable of you.
Yeah, I wondered since, like if that's the right thing to do, but I think it's important to not to allow people to make the best decision they can, and I expressed myself, but I didn't think that the weight of the emotions in that moment, I didn't want to be manipulative in that way. Even though I was young, I didn't want to be manipulative. I just wanted to make the decision, and I thought I would just respect it. But I mourn though. I read about that time that that's one of the greatest losses that a person can have outside of the loss of an immediate family member is a divorce.
Yeah.
And especially like if you're the person who really didn't want to separate, then it's really difficult.
Yeah, because it's still a loss. It's and there's
Yeah.
hopes and dreams that go out the window, and yeah. So let's fast forward 10 years then. So you were married at 18, seemingly divorced at 25, and
Yes.
then so where were you at 28?
At 28, I met my present wife, and I was going into the trades as a union electrician,
Okay.
which I was really happy about. And at that time, I thought that might be the best thing for me as far as trades. I thought, well, I bounced around at different things. I worked. I was famous for my second jobs because I worked every known second job I think in mankind, and I just felt like, well, now I finally have a job. I can work my way up, and I always believed that. I thought that it was something that didn't involve politics. I thought if I'm a good worker, if I work hard every day, then I keep my job, and that was important to me. So I thought I'm just going to be a really good worker. I know I can work hard, and I think that really the only fear I had at that point is that it might become um, a political kind of a job. I was always sort of afraid of that because I just wanted to work. I wasn't much for the political
How
side of things.
would an electrical engineer be political?
This was the electrical union as an electrician,
Ah, okay.
and what I would find out a lot of times is that a lot of the assignments were sort of insider things, and you
Mhm.
would keep a job like every fall when there would be layoffs. If you were on the company bowling team or the softball team, or uh, you knew the boss's family real well or something, then you would keep your job through the winter, and the rest of us would deliver pizzas
Uh,
or work
yeah,
for
my dad was a member of
repossessed cars or
uh,
whatever you would have to do.
my dad hauled molasses and was a Teamsters member. So I remember those types of things too.
Yeah.
So 28, you're doing all of this. What are your hopes at this point? What are the hopes for the rest of your life?
Well, I think I always look back at the example that my dad had. I thought I want to save a little bit of money and buy a house. So like my dad, like I thought if I followed his footsteps, I thought he was a really good example of what to live up to. And I thought that's what I want to save money, buy a house, and then just be stable in that way. And he always seemed to be this kind of a person. There was nothing flashy about him, and I didn't think that I was much of a flashy person either. But he had good relationships with people. He never looked over his shoulder. He never owed anybody any money. He always told people the truth, even if it was uncomfortable. But he just seemed like one of those people that I respected. And I think my fear a lot of time is that it was more important for me to be liked than to always be truthful. Like sometimes I thought I could spare someone's feelings, and so then I wouldn't always be truthful in that way. And I always thought that when I would see the results over the years of the relationships that my dad had, I thought you're better off being that kind of a person. But I didn't know if I could do it.
It's tough.
It can be really hard.
Yeah. Loving is one of the hardest things to do. We just think it's easy sometimes. So let's fast forward. Are we done with 28? Was that, should we jump to 38 at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So tell me who you were at 38.
well, at 38, I'd been in the Navy for a couple years by then,
Okay. So you joined the Navy late.
very late. And in fact, if I waited another month, it would have been too late
What
to
prompted
enlist.
this?
And I got laid off from an
Okay.
electrician job, and I called up. I said, "That did it. I'm tired of this." And I saw a job that said 1-800 firefighters, and I thought, "Oh, firefighter, I'm in good shape. I can do this." So I dialed 1-800 firefighters, and the guy answered the phone and said, "Navy recruiting office." And I said, I slammed the phone down. I said, "That I should call the Better Business Bureau." And so Cindy said, "Well, what do you have to lose? I mean, you're delivering pizzas and doing." And I said, "Well, I'll go in there, but I'm like, this is not for me. I'm telling you right now." And the recruiter said, "Well, what do you like to do?" And I said, "Well, I run marathons." And he said, "Oh, Navy running team. We'll pay for your entrance fee, and we'll even pay to transport you where you tell me where you want to run, and we'll get you there, and we'll pay for it, and we give you running shoes and a uniform." It's like, wow, this is great. He said, "What else do you like to do?" And I said, "I wish I would have paid attention in college." And he said, "Tuition assistance." Well, tuition assistance, what's that? He goes, "Well, we pay for everything. We pay for your books." Or I'm going, wow, you. And it seemed like everything that I wanted to do, he was going, got it covered.
Good recruiter.
So yeah, he was, and it turned out everything he said was true.
Oh, that's good.
But there I was at 38. I was on the Navy running team, and I was, back at college,
Wow.
and but when I was raising my hand, the two guys on either side of me were 17, and I was 34. And one guy looked at me and he goes, "I'm half your age." And I said, "Be quiet over there, young man."
Respect your elders.
Yeah, be quiet. I'm old enough to be your dad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but even at that time, I was thinking, am I doing the right thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is the right decision. And I wondered, because a lot of people my age were going, "Are you kidding me? You're going to start all over. You're a journeyman electrician, and you're going to go back to being an E1 in the Navy. You must be out of your mind." But I thought the benefits were, I really wasn't thinking like a lot of people will say, I joined the Navy to serve my country and to do all these. And I was just sort of thinking of the benefits. And I'll usually tell people, I wish I could say I had a more patriotic reason, but I was just trying to think of going back to school and much more selfish reasons.
Well, that's why they give them, though, right? To entice you and to do all that,
Yeah.
We can't rely on patriotism for everybody.
Yeah.
So did you sign up for 4 years, 8 years? What was your plan at that point?
I signed up for 4 years, and then I thought I would do 4 years and get out and go back into the electrical union. And but then I would have some education and and maybe some benefits that I could continue going to school. And I thought maybe I could be a teacher within the electrical union. And then they offered another school while I was in the Navy, and then they said, "We'll offer you a school, and then we'll offer annual incentives if you take this school." And I went back to Cindy and said, "If I re-enlist, I'm staying in for 20 years. So this isn't just 6 years. I'm staying in for good if I re-enlist." And she thought it was a good idea. She said, I think you fit very well with this. You really don't have any bad habits. I think you live a lifestyle that's ideal for the military." So she said, "I think it's good." And I said, "But as long as you're comfortable with the idea of moving around," because we had 2 children in diapers at that point. And but it was sort of a family decision between she and I. And I thought if she's okay with it, then I would stay in.
And she was.
And she was.
So where did you go? Where did you travel to?
Our first duty station was up in Maine, in Portsmouth, New
So
Hampshire. But
exotic.
yeah, it was. I didn't know that New Hampshire had a coastline up until that point.
Oh,
They told me I was
okay.
going to New Hampshire, and I thought, oh, you guys are just joking. And they said, no, I'm serious. New Hampshire, and it was right on the border, and it was just beautiful. And from there, we went down to Portsmouth, Portsmouth, from Portsmouth, New Hampshire to Portsmouth, Virginia, and then we came back up here. My son was diagnosed with autism, and when we came back up here, they had something for exceptional families, they call us, where you can just stay in one area and just get the services for your children if they have a
Okay.
diagnosis. And then I would deploy, but my family could just stay in one spot. So then we stayed here in Connecticut for the last 12 years of my career.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
So you were stateside for most of it.
for most of it. Yeah, I deployed on the WASP 2 times, and those were 6-month deployments. And then I deployed with the Army for 1 year to Iraq.
What's the WASP?
That was a ship out of Portsmouth, Virginia,
Oh, okay.
and it's mostly a marine transport. They do a lot of things, but they mostly transport Marines.
Mm.
And they're a landing ship. They're one of those ships where the back can lower, and then they have landing ships that can go out the back, and then the ships drop down like in Normandy,
Oh,
and then
wow.
the Marines can rush ashore.
Oh, wow.
It's a really cool ship. That was my favorite duty station of my 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I learned a lot there.
I'm sure lots of memories, lots of
Yeah,
wisdom.
yeah, lots
So
of good
what
people.
was your job in the Navy?
I was a hospital corpsman, and
Okay.
that's like they'd say like Army medics and Air Force medics. And hospital corpsmen also provide medical care for the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps doesn't have their own, and because the Navy and Marine Corps are tied together, we provide all of their medical care.
Well, I have to say, I said in the opener that this book grabbed me from the first line. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to read it. Is that okay?
Sure.
Something elusive fell from the moonless sky in southern Iraq, its graceful trajectory as alluring as a falling meteor. The sky shifted around like jagged chars of kaleidoscope with every shade of darkness. 5 months in Iraq in 2007 was long enough for that allure. It became counterintuitive, attaching itself to an injurious, even lethal complacency. And you guys got to go get this book. It's so good. So, what point? How old were you when this happened? Because I mean, you are not a child that most people are going into war. They're relative children. You are a grown man with your own children going into this. When did this start to take place in your life?
Well, this happened. This was in 2007. So I was 49
Wow.
when I deployed, and that was we'd already been there for 6 months when that first part came. It was a little out of sequence with the rest of the book, but what I wanted to capture there was just the drain, I think, of being deployed like for a long period of time. That they had some people on the base. It was a base of 5,000 Army people, and they had about 500 of us sailors that were there in support, and they also had Air Force personnel, and some of them never left the base. But just being deployed for that period of time, like with the routine, and there were berms around us, it was almost like it reminded me a lot of times of like just a big frying pan. There were just these edges, and it was hot enough, and it's just the routine is the same, and the scenery is the same, and it's like everything you're doing is the same. That it just wears, it can just wear on you. At that point, I had just begun to do convoys where I was leaving the base, And I just was tired. Like I just wanted to go home. And I think that's what I was trying to capture. Uh, at that point, the most pivotal point in the book had already passed, and I felt that when they talk about fight or flight, I really only thought of it as a two-dimensional idea, and the freeze never really occurred to me until much later, and I began to read a lot more about it when I returned. And the first book I came where they talked about the freeze portion of it was with Judith Herman, where she was talking about incest and rape survivors, where she talked about the freeze portion of it. And that was the first explanation I had for what happened to me, because I didn't do anything. I was like looking sort of at the corner of my eye at what was in the sky, and I really had no reaction to it at all. And I was thinking, I'm gonna die. I didn't feel any regret or anything. I just didn't even, it was like I was just stepping outside of myself. And I was trying to find something in books that I could find. Like I thought, what could explain a feeling like that? I didn't know anything like that existed until I read Dr. Herman's account of what happens to people. And I found a lot of comfort in reading. I actually wrote to,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I actually wrote to Dr. Herman, and I told her how relieved I was. I told her what my situation was. I said, I'm not typical of the patients that you're writing about, but I wonder if you had ever encountered that before. And she had, but her emphasis was mostly on women and incest survivors.
Well, trauma's trauma, right?
Yes.
So you worked with PTSD. You encountered your own PTSD also?
Yes.
Or suffered from it, rather. I guess that would be a better word.
Yes.
So through your own there, how did this all work in your life? How did this become?
Well, I thought in one moment in the book, I found out, it's really two moments, but in one moment of the book, I found out that during a medical evolution, we had to test patients, people that were in one of the compounds that detained, and it was an Al-Qaeda compound. And one of the detainees that they had somehow gotten his hands on an envelope with my parents' address. And I could see him standing in this line because we were doing tuberculosis tests on people, and I'm looking, and if they were told, like for the most part, like the people with ideal extremist mentalities, for the most part, they wouldn't look at us at all. They'd rather not have us touch them or be anywhere near them. But because they were told to by their elder in the compound, they did. And a couple of them would say, like politely, they would say thank you in Arabic and just move on. But this one guy was like standing outside of the line and looking at me. And I kept looking up at him, and then eventually he held up this envelope. And I sort of looked at it, and I went back to my business, and all of a sudden I looked back up at the envelope, and I'm like, wow, it has those American Legion stickers on it, like the ones my mother uses. And I went back to doing it. All of a sudden I thought, and it had those little heart things that my mother puts on the envelope when she mails me a letter. And then the handwriting, and then I looked at it, and he was like maybe 4 people down on this line. And then I looked at it, and I thought, he has my parents' address.
Oh my God.
And I looked at him, and then he looked at me, and he still was holding the envelope up. And then, the other people realized what was going on, and they went and they took the envelope. But we were like staring at each other, and I was thinking, I can't believe this guy has. And he was looking at my name tag, like he probably was thinking, I can't believe of all the people that are coming here doing this, that this person is the same person. And then they didn't even test him. They just moved him out of the way. But we were like looking at each other. I was thinking, me yet. I was thinking in my own mind, and the interpreter who knew me real well, like he took me away for a while and he said, you've gotta relax, you've got to calm down. They're trying to get a rise out of you. I said, it's too late for that.
Yeah.
It's way too late for that. And I said that address could be anywhere because people were coming in and going out of that camp. It was in Camp Buka. I said they're coming in and going out every day. There's people going. That address could have been copied and sent, 100 different times. It could be anywhere in the world by now. So I didn't do anything. And a few weeks later, rockets and mortars came in and it accidentally hit his compound.
Oh, wow.
And when I found out, they said it was, they said the number of the compound. And I thought, that's his compound. And I ran and I jumped into a troop transport that was going there. And we went in there. And normally we would check in our weapons. We'd have to check in with the armory because it was against the Geneva Conventions for us to have weapons and deal with these detainees. But I thought, in all this chaos, no one is paying any attention to it. And I walked into the compound, and because I wanted to find him, and I found him, but he was badly injured. Mm. And he looked at me, and I just looked at him, and we just sort of stopped for a second. And I had a tourniquet in one pocket, and I had my pistol in the other hand, and I was just standing there thinking, what am I going to do?
Wow.
And I just was like sort of looking at him, and it was just hot. Like there just was like sweat that was just running down. And like he just looked at me, and we just looked, and like after a couple of minutes, I could tell he was like, I was sitting there thinking, what could I do to save him? Like I was thinking of what his injuries were, but I couldn't move. And eventually he put his hand out like he was trying to reach out. And I was thinking, is he asking me to forgive him? Is he asking for help? I didn't know what he was looking for. I could hear him breathing. And then he began to mutter something. And I thought, it didn't occur to me that it was a prayer at that time, but I began to say a prayer. Because I had no idea what to do, and I just was completely unable to move. I began to say an act of contrition, and then in the time I was saying that, he died. A couple feet away from him, there was another man was helping someone who was injured, and it turned out to be his son. And then I realized he was the first man died. And I went over to help the second one, and his son also died, like right in that moment. As I walked up to him, he looked over his dad's shoulder, and his dad had his back to me. And I really felt like just overwhelmed. But I pulled out the tourniquet, and then I walked up to him, and as the boy looked at me, he had this look of like complete horror, like at the sight. Like I was thinking, he looked at an American soldier, and he had this horror, and I thought we're the good guys. Like that was my first impulse, that I thought we're here to help, that we're good guys. But he just had this just abject terror on his face, and then he passed away. Mm. And his father, after a couple seconds, like he just was just like shaking for a second, and then he just let out this scream, like when he realized what happened. And I didn't know. I couldn't explain why I did it. It was just like a reaction. I put my hand on his shoulder, and this man with no idea who was back there, besides, I was empathizing with him. He didn't know who I was. He put his hand over mine and he squeezed. And I thought, we're like just two fathers. I thought, like, 5 minutes before that, maybe we would, been fighting to the death, and maybe 5 minutes after that we'd be fighting to the death. But I thought for that second, we just were two fathers. And I was thinking of my sons, and I was thinking of his mother, and I was I didn't know how to explain. I thought, how would you explain that to to anybody? I thought of my mother's last look at the airport, like all these things were going through my mind. And I didn't, I thought, how do you reconcile all these things? But I believed when someone would ask me in the PTSD clinic, if someone would ask me, like, where did it all start for you? Where did you think your PTSD began? I said it was right in that moment, I believe, because I was raised uh, at some points in my life, I wanted to be a Catholic priest, and I wanted to live a life like my parents. I wanted my parents to be proud of me, and I wanted my grandmother to be proud of me. Uh, and this is the person that I grew up wanting to be. And then when I was in this war, I was this person that I sort of had to be. Like the conditions were dictating that you're thinking you have to be honorable to these men and women who are here. You have to be honorable, that you're trained to be this way. You have to be this way. And I would try to explain to them, I'm like, I had to make a choice between those two people. Was I going to be the person I was raised to be, or was I going to be the corpsman I was trained to be?
Wow.
And I said, and I think that was where the split began for me, is I had to make a choice. I had to deny one or the other. And I said, really, in the end, I really didn't choose one, or I didn't choose either of them. I just completely froze. And one guy said, do you think that's better? I said, I thought it was worse because I thought I disappointed everybody.
Oh, wow.
I didn't help anybody, and I didn't protect anybody. I felt it was worse. So I said that was, but I said, that's my experience. And I would try to share that with people in the clinic. And I would try to tell them some of the difficulties I had when I would come home, that I would say, if you're going through a difficult time, like one guy said, look, I'm a Marine. I don't see any Marines here in this clinic. There's no one who understands what I went through at Haditha. And I went, they weren't there. They don't know. And I said, here's where you're cheating yourself, because you don't know what these people have been through in their lifetime. And there was one doctor who was she was a young doctor, but I'm like, you have no idea what she's been through on her path to becoming a doctor here, or why she got into this field. There might be some incredible reason of why she decided that she wanted to work in this clinic, and she's here there might be some reason that you don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, think of this. If she says one thing that makes you better than you were when you started this inpatient program, then you're one thing better. And I said, you don't know where the good advice is going to come from. You just don't know. So I said, don't cheat yourself.
Isn't that one of the biggest problems with PTSD in the military, is that you're supposed to be this person that you're not. You're supposed to be invincible, strong. And then when you're not, there's some type of internal shame, right? That compounds onto the PTSD from there.
Yeah. I never missed a day. I had 3 concussions in that year. Wow. And I never missed a day. And I because I didn't want someone to tell me that I was a liability. And that liability is like, when I was young, if my mother said she was disappointed, I think I would just melt into a puddle. That was like the worst thing I could hear, is that I disappointed them. And liability is like the equivalent of that for the military. It's like you've become a liability to your unit. It's like you're no good to anyone around you. And it's like the worst thing you can hear. And so I thought, well, I'm operating at 40%, but I'm not going to have someone tell me that I'm a liability to my team. So and I thought it wasn't just me. It was just, the other guys are like, I'm just plugging away. So I try not to complain, because I thought it's me and everyone else. Like, I'm having headaches, I'm having this or that. I'm like, yeah, me and everybody else. We're just trying to get through. We're just doing our best. So it was, but that there is a sense of shame. And I know they'll have talking points when they talk about this. We have, they had something when we were deployed. They had a red light, yellow light, and green light kind of things that I think I've had enough. I think I need to be taken offline for a while. And I thought no one is ever gonna. I I can't imagine. I think they would be ostracized if they did.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't. And there were times like as a corpsman, if someone would come in, I go, you need to be offline for a while. And I would say I'd advocate for you if you want me to go to your boss, and they're going, please, doc, don't do this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm leaving it up to you because you're the person. But if you want support, I'll get you offline for a while. You've got to collect yourself. There are ways, and they would have some people there, but it's just no one would choose to take it.
Well, we're not machines, and the military compound is a machine. So they ask you to be a machine, and then we wonder what the results and the consequences are that. And we're shocked to go, oh my God, what do you mean they're fucked up? There's no way of preventing that when you're supposed to be a robot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the great myths too, when I came home, I had this idea in my head that I'm not going to bring the war home. I think this is like this movie thing. It's just like, well, what happens over there, it stays there. I'm not gonna, I'm gonna come home and that's it. I'm gonna put my feet in grass and curl my toes and that's it. Everything's gonna be great. And I watched this one Bruce Willis movie, and there's one where I think he jumped off an airplane that was ready to take off, and he landed on a concrete runway and rolled like about 300 times. And by the end of the movie, like a building is collapsing and everything else. And then he goes back and he sees his wife and two daughters, and then they just all hug, and then they just go walking off in the sunset. And I'm like, that's not how it works, everybody, just to let you know. But there's going to be a lot of reverberations after something like that. And for me, I when I came home, I thought I am not going to bring the war home, and I thought that was the worst decision I ever made. And in my case, after those two men died, uh, my interpreter offered, like, I wanted to know more about the two men because I thought I looked into the eyes of these people, and I said, is it possible to learn more about who these men were? And he translated their journals and their personal effects, their letters home,
Oh,
their
wow.
letters from their loved ones, um, the letters that they were sending home that they hadn't sent yet, and he gave them to me, and I had them in an envelope, and they hung in my closet for 4 years. And I thought of all the life changes I went through in 4 years, and then I wound up separating. My family wound up moving out. I drove them out actually because I thought that maybe terrorists would come to my house, and I thought this way I don't have to worry about my family. I'll just take care of business. That's how crazy things were. But and these letters hung in this closet for 4 years, and wouldn't think of like just like reading any of them. I thought I'm not going to bring it home, and some kind of common sense meter in my head was just thinking, well, then why do you have them there? Why don't you throw them away? And I couldn't throw them away.
Yeah.
And eventually I was court ordered to go, after a couple police incidents, to go to counseling. And when I did, the first time they came up, this counselor said, you haven't read any of them? He said, how about if you just bring one in? Just bring one. Just grab a random one and just bring it in. Let's get an idea of what they say. And we wound up reading all of them together. And that really is like the whole last part of the book is he'd actually written letters somewhat to me, like he'd written letters, but it explained his life, like how his life had played out, that the occupation of their country, the way they looked at it. And it was an education, and it was almost it probably was about the best marriage counseling I could get. He actually had in there how much he regretted that he showed me the letter, because he felt the process of doing that had perpetuated this hatred in this war, and what his wish would be for me when I return home, that I not continue to to fall into what he had done. And it just was.
I'm a little bit confused now. The interpreter wrote this to you as he was interpreting the letters.
Yeah, he
Okay.
translated the letters, and it turned out the man who had the letter, he was writing letters to his family, but his family had been they'd been refugee 2 different times. They fled as the Americans were advancing in Al Anbar province. They fled American advances 2 different times, and one time his mother and sister were killed in a bombing, and then they continued to go westward, and then his father was killed in crossfire between Marines and insurgents. And he was never an insurgent. He was never. They just were trying to flee, and so all of his living relatives were gone, and all of his letters were written to nobody that was alive. He just continued to write to them as if they were alive, and I still, like, to this day, I'll sit there and think, if I didn't ask, or if he didn't translate those letters, they would have thrown him in. They would have said he doesn't have living relatives, throw him in the burn pit, and no one would have ever read these letters. And I thought, what a miracle that somehow or another I stumbled into having these letters. So I felt like an obligation to, like, try to tell somebody, like, here, you look at someone like this is the worst enemy in the world. Like, I went to that compound because I was going to kill him. And it turned out I couldn't, but that was what I had in my mind. This is the worst. This is the reason we're here, is to fight these people who are that they mean harm to our country, or to my family. And it's like I thought you can't find a worse enemy than this. And it turned out that none of that was true. And I thought, maybe, like, nowadays, when things are so divided and it's so easy for people to identify an enemy and say that is an enemy, and that, I've identified the enemy and I must destroy that, that maybe there's some other way first, that there's another path before seek and destroy.
It's so interesting to me that your acquaintance with him began with a letter, and then you got his. Did you ever find out how he got that envelope?
Yeah, they had the base was cleaned like toilets, and it was all porta potties and everything, but they were all cleaned by what they call third-party nationals, and they would do a security clearance of them, but some of them were Iraqi citizens, and we held a lot of people in. They called them detainees, not prisoners, because a lot of them were held without charges, and I think a lot of in fact, they were held without charges, and a lot of them were paid a monthly stipend, because we didn't release them, but we couldn't hold them on charges either. So
Wow.
we were paying them to stay in the facility.
Wow.
Which was a lot of money, because we
Yeah.
had 15,000 people there. And some of them were really bad people, but there were a lot that they're like, why are you even holding me? Well, because I said so. That's why, one of those. But they had third-party nationals would go, like, when we would get a mail call or something, they would go into the dumpsters, and then they would just cut out the addresses. And if they would get away, because they'd move around the base, like, for trash and different things, and then they'd find a way to get it to a compound. Then once they realized this was happening, then they took everything from the dumpsters. They had them right next to the burn pit. And then once everything went into there, then right from the dumpster, it went right into the burn pit. Once they realized it was going on.
Wow. Which created its own problems environmentally and physically and stuff like that. So 48, you're in Iraq and experiencing all of this. How long, if we skipped forward to 58, are you healed? I know it's a lifelong process, but are you progressing at that point?
Well, by 58, I was reunited with my family again, And my focus was really like on writing the book and finishing the book. And at that point, I think I probably felt healthier than I had ever felt,
Mm.
because I finally I included my family in my recovery, and I think that's what had been missing all along. Like it's really being like what they call the exceptional family. When my son was diagnosed with autism, I found this to be pretty common, that the man normally says, these doctors don't know what they're saying, forget what the doctor says. And then but then the wife a lot of times would just like Cindy bought every book known to man on autism. She began investigating resources. Like they didn't have the internet then, but she did. I mean, she was driving like all over Maine to find out. She was getting these birth to three programs, and I mean, she was just finding everything out. She was networking and all this. And I was just saying, we don't need all this kind of stuff. What we need is our family. And she was doing the opposite. And it like that difference in mentality can really drive a wedge.
Yeah.
And eventually, like we sort of realigned, but like a lot of times it's difficult. Like that can be a reason for a lot of divorces in the military, where the
Yeah.
guy's just saying, no, I'm not going to hear this. There's nothing wrong with my son or my daughter. And when you come home from a deployment is another time that there's a real stress test on marriages. And uh, I didn't want to talk about it, and my wife did want to talk about it, but I misunderstood what was important to her. Like I was saying, you're trying to be manipulative and make me talk about Iraq, and I am not talking about it. I would be real, and she was just like, I what was important to her was to know how I felt,
Mhm.
and know like how going to Iraq impacted me. And she wanted to be like a part of it. Like she just wanted to say, like to say, I'm sorry you had to go through that, or I'm sorry that this had an impact on you in that way. Like she didn't care about the details.
Yeah.
And then me at the same time, I'm like, I am not going into the details. And that was never important. It took us years. And then after a while, she was living in Florida, and we had this. It's sort of a joke between us now, because I would have a tendency, because I was sort of a like I would try to think logically, and I'll go, Cindy, let me explain. Here's what I know about this. I would like try to break everything
Mansplaining.
down, and which would drive her nuts.
Yeah.
It's sort of the mansplain, I think, is what they call it.
Yeah, that's why just mansplaining. Yeah.
And and then I would explain. See, this is how the logical explanation of how this. Therefore, you should agree with me. And then so we were having a debate. We were on the phone, and I was trying to explain to her, look, I'm really trying now. I'm not drinking. I'm not, I'm working on the anger issues, and I've really come a long way. And then we began to have a debate about something, and halfway through, like she said something, and I stopped, and I said, "What don't I know about this?" She was going, "What? What are you even talking about?" I said, "What you're saying. What don't I understand? Like you're trying to tell me something. What don't I get?" Like instead of trying to mansplain it, and she was just like, "Is this you? Like what happened?" But I was like, "Well, I know it's important to you, but I'm not getting it. Could you just explain it?" And I think that was one of the first times that she was thinking, I think something is different.
Mm.
And but it's like really small things sometimes like that, where you're just thinking, just tell me why this is so important to you. You're really digging in for a reason. I know it, but I'm just missing it. You know what? And then when she has a second to relax and go, okay, and then she would explain it, and all of a sudden you're like, now I'm getting it. And half the time we're trying to say the same thing, but but we began to, now we laugh. We can sort of laugh a little bit, but like at that time, it was a really important thing to reach. And
Yeah.
it's like to reach it organically, where you're just saying, just tell me, what I don't understand, and giving her a chance to explain something. And when she talked about what she cared about, and I was just saying, well, this is how it affected me. And in some ways, she felt thankful for the deployment, because she said, I'd never wish it on you, but in some ways, it was the first thing I ever saw you deal with that you just couldn't compartmentalize and just put in a box, file it away, and then just go along, one foot in front of the other. And she said it's the first thing that you just couldn't handle it, and you had to become yourself. And I'm like, oh, then maybe in a way it was a blessing.
Well, you made the most out of it.
Yeah.
You made it work for you.
Yeah.
I'm kind of stuck on I'm going to leave Iraq in Iraq. It's like you thought that you could take your boots off and then it would be gone. Like all of your experiences, all of the trauma, very like, okay, let's just put this over here. And then it just doesn't exist anymore. And I think a lot of people go through that. I mean, we compartmentalized for survival, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we could handle it all, if we could take it all in, we wouldn't need to compartmentalize, but we compartmentalize it just to be able to handle it. And good on you for looking and searching and doing all of the hard work that healing involves. You are a good, honorable man, Jim, and I am glad to know you.
Thank you very much.
We are at the top of the hour. I told you I was going to fly.
Yeah, it really has.
Yeah, right? Closing words. Again, let me put this up. Hi, David. How are you? This is Jim's book. Here's a copy of it I have that I absolutely cherish. Closing remarks, wise words. Where can people find you to reach out? And the book is available on Amazon and all of that stuff, but close us out here.
I just started a website now. I finally have become smarter than my smartphone. And I have a website that's just jimenderle.net.
Okay.
And I'm trying to put an essay on, like an essay every couple of weeks. And then I've done a couple TED Talks that are expanded stories from the book.
Fantastic. So they can find you under your name under the TED Talk thing?
Yes.
Awesome. And at your website, jimenderle.net.
Yep.
So wise words, what would you like to impart on us as far as your wisdom in saying goodbye?
I think my favorite thing to tell people is always try to listen, because you never know where the wisest words come from. And I've been lucky, probably, like I was going to say, when I would go through each of the phases of my life, I was going to go through the most unexpected places I received the greatest wisdom. That just comes from, sometimes it's the person way in the back of the room where you're just going, who said that? Are you serious? And you just never know sometimes. So I always try to listen, and I've been blessed that way.
Well, I love that, because you have to be open to listen, and your openness shows across your entire life, and it's beautiful. Thank you. I'm going to send you backstage and close the show out. Sure, David, we'll go ahead and do the VIP. I'll send you the link. Thank you so much, Jim. It was such a great show. I'm honored to have spent this last hour with you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I have this all. Okay, here we go. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. I like to go weeks without crying on the show, but I just couldn't resist tonight. So sorry for my tissues and all of that. Again, let me know, does my head look like it's on fire, or should I ditch the fire? I don't know what I should do. I kind of like it. Do you? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. I will see you next week. I appreciate you and inviting me into your world. Be sure to look at the other shows. Oh, guess what, you guys? I was invited to the Wild Goose Festival. So I am hoping to be speaking at Wild Goose in July. I would appreciate your support more than you know. I will see you next week. And make sure you walk in love. Bye.